It's so funny how I can agree with someone's opinions on the job search process, but then still have to tell them, I get that that's an accurate understanding of the
Yep.
world, but that's not how the world operates, right? Like,
Yep.
it's like the job search is so biased. It's so horribly put together. The fact that we have like 10 interviews and 2 take home assignments, and you'll still get rejected after 3 months of
Mhm.
interviews. And I was actually recently talking to my parents about this because they listened to one of the episodes and they were asking me questions. And they're like, this is not what it was like 30 years ago. And I'm like, you're absolutely
Oh,
right. It
really?
is not what it was like at all because
Mm,
companies just made decisions more quickly, right?
yeah.
There just wasn't the ability to have thousands of resumes flood through one opportunity on, like, before
Sure.
LinkedIn and these online job boards, people had to mail in or fax in their applications. So of course you're not going to get as many, right? Just the physical act of doing it limits the
Right.
number of people, or the fact that it was regional, right? You were only competing with people in your small town or in your city. Now we're competing globally. Just some random
Yeah.
person in Connecticut is competing with people in New York and California and India, right? And so it is really kind of crazy how things are getting more and more complex. And then we have to, add on these additional things, right? We have the most recent thing that was just announced that TikTok is doing resumes. I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen this?
And no, what? First of all,
Yeah.
I don't know how to use TikTok regularly, let alone with a resume.
Yeah, I tried to get into it for a hot second and then I like 3 hours disappeared from my life just scrolling. And I was
Yeah.
like, I don't have time for this. I don't have the self-control for it.
Yeah.
But it is, they're doing video resumes. And my mind always flips
Mm,
back to this idea of like cover letters were created because you had to put them in an envelope with your
sure.
resume so that they knew which job you were applying to because your envelope wasn't tied to a job board, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. But then once we moved past fax machines, why do we still have cover letters, right? And
Yeah.
then we have resumes, but then they created LinkedIn as a way to negate the resume. Yep, now we need both, right? So
Mhm.
with TikTok video applications, it's like now we need these cover letters, which are from the 70s and 80s. And then we need the LinkedIn profile, which is from the 2000s and 2020s. And then we need these TikTok things for the 2030s and beyond. Like it just keeps getting more and more complex without removing any of the old barriers. And so
Right.
I'm curious, like, what impact has that had on your students? Have you seen like people who are trying to brand themselves have difficulties or, just
Mm.
managing the sheer number of apps that you have to go through to do this job search process?
I think the biggest issue I hear is time. And if you have a resume and cover letter already, like once you go through Turing, everyone has had a resume and a cover letter. So by the time they get to work with me, they at least have those two things and LinkedIn. And so to have like a video application is this third new thing that isn't really structured. They don't always have like ideas around it. There's not a lot of like accessible templates on what I should put in my video cover letter. So we actually had a position that was posted fairly recently in our community at Turing through Slack. And we were talking about why did not enough people apply to this? And the response was that they asked for a video application instead of a traditional resume and cover letter. And for some people, that was very scary. Like you're introducing this new thing that I've never done before. And the other piece was like the time to put into it because everyone wants their videos to be like polished. They want them to look nice. And then there's a lot of limitations that come with that. So I think it's nice. Like I would personally prefer a video cover letter to a written cover letter, but I also totally acknowledge that like I've navigated more of these spaces than a lot of the job seekers have, and I have some of the tools. So it won't seem as scary to me as it is someone who like would like a job soon.
Yeah, and maybe it won't be so scary to, younger generations who are much more ingrained in these apps and
Mhm.
things like that. But there's always, that's always a smaller portion of the population than the norm, right? Most
Yeah.
people aren't making videos every day. Like that's just
Right.
true. And I even remember when I did my first video application. It was for some like World Future Society. I don't even know what it was, but they were like, put together a 1-minute video. And I must
Yeah.
have made 40 different videos to try and get it
Yeah.
down to a minute. Cause like you don't realize how short a minute is until you try and
Mhm.
say your pitch in a minute. And I remember it took almost a whole weekend. And I'm someone who makes videos on a fairly regular basis, and I had anxiety with it. And like
Yeah.
I remember that there's a new thing in the sales world where they do, instead of doing a first round interview with a real person, it's the video template interviews. Have you come across these yet?
Yeah. Is it kind of where they'll just give you a question and then you like asynchronously answer it?
Yeah, they give you a prompt and then you
Okay.
hit record and you have to answer the question. And then they
Yeah.
come back and watch it as a team later at some point. And
Mhm.
sometimes they give you multiple, like unlimited reattempts, but sometimes they only give you like 1 or 3. And so if you mess up, like that's what it
Yeah.
saves. And I remember the first time I did one of those, it had a countdown in the top corner of 60, 59, 58,
Oh,
57. And I was like, again, I'm someone who makes video pretty regularly. And
yeah.
I was like having a full on like, by the end of it, you're like just speed talking. It's
Yeah.
really crazy how like, and then we take people who are you know, neurodivergent and we try and say like, hey, you have difficulty holding a conversation in a networking in like a networking event. Now go
Yeah.
do this under
Mhm.
immense pressure. and and it's for a job like a coder. Like most coders, even if they're extroverted, don't feel a need to like, you know, be the most in your face marketers and
Right.
salespeople, right? And so how do you sort of help them navigate that side of things, right? Because there's the actual skill of the job, and then there's the skill of the
Mhm.
job search. And we teach people the skill of the job search, but sometimes it's so far removed from their job. Like maybe a marketer or a salesperson
Yeah.
is a little bit closer tied in, but like a coder, what are your sort of, what are the things that you say to them or the things that you notice as they're trying to like learn this new skill?
Mm. I think the thing that I have noticed is folks that come from sales and marketing tend to do better in the job search because they already have some of these skills from previous industries. And folks who come from like STEM, I would say almost specifically, like if you're coming from a non interpersonal communication focused field, tend to have a steeper learning curve. Because for a lot of people, the question is like, well, why do I have to do this? This really isn't going to be like, why does this matter at the end of my job? Like, this doesn't connect to the position I applied to. Um, and it's that response of like, well, if you'd like to work for this company, these are the hoops that you have to go through, and we can work together to navigate those. I think for folks that do struggle with like selling themselves, talking about accomplishments and results, it's really helpful to give them time to like brainstorm or prompts, because just asking the question of tell me about your greatest accomplishment for some folks is like a deer in headlights. It's like, well,
Hmm.
what have I ever done? I've never accomplished anything. But if you can give them like some structured prompts, space to brainstorm, they can usually come up with some good ideas. And then I have them just literally keep that either on a Word document or a physical sheet of paper as kind of like a reminder that they've done great things and they can continue to do great things. And that's been helpful.